Hi, it's Michael from First Aid Oz, and today we're looking at duty of care and incident reporting. So very important when it comes to first aid that people understand what their legal responsibilities are, particularly if you're doing first aid as part of your employment or as part of your subcontracted work that you might be involved in as a self-employed person. So effectively, duty of care means that you have a legal responsibility for other people. So when you're in that situation, okay, that means you're also responsible not only for providing the service for which you're getting paid for, but ensuring that the person's health and safety are taken into account. From a first aid point of view, of course, that means that if something was to go wrong, where a person is injured or something that requires some medical attention, that you're primarily responsible for ensuring that the attention is given. Now, it may be a case where you're having to administer some first aid yourself, or you're needing to delegate that responsibility to somebody who's qualified and equipped to do it, or in a worst case situation, you need to be responsible for ensuring that emergency service will get to the casualty in a very prompt fashion. So examples of people with duty of care would be, say, in a childcare industry, you'd be responsible for all the children in your class. Aged care, you're responsible for all the people in your facility. If I was a disability worker, for example, maybe I'm attending somebody's house, well then that particular person I'm responsible for. Duty of care takes a different magnitude if you're in a management position, however, because not only are you responsible for the clients, but you're also responsible for the staff, okay? Because a lot of workplace injuries involve people who work in the workplace, not just people who visit the workplace. So there is a chain of command, if you like. If you're the owner of the business, well then you're responsible for making sure that everybody in the business, both clients and staff, are in a safe environment, which is more to the prevention side of things, but also you have to have proper processes and procedures in place for when something goes wrong, which includes making sure your staff are also first aid trained, which is for a lot of you why you're probably doing one of our courses at the moment. So it's very important for duty of care that you understand your legal responsibility. Now, it's quite different if you're down the street on your day off or away on holidays and there was somebody who needed, some first aid attention. Legally, you got the option not to help. We like to think in a lot of cases, people would help out of the goodness of their heart. However, once you do start to administer first aid, you are now inheriting or taking on a duty of care. Okay, so that's important that once you commence to assist the person, that you carry it through to the point where you've done everything you can and the person's situation is managed, or that you're responsible also for ensuring that they get the help that they need. So it could be calling an ambulance or something along those lines. Okay. On the subject of that, however, particularly in the workplace, it's very, very important that anytime there's an incident in the workplace, whether it's an accident, particularly something involving an injury, we need to record everything. So you might have an injury register in your workplace, whether it's something like a booklet like that or a notepad where you might write down everything that you did, what the condition was, what the treatment was, what the recommendation was. That's very important. Now, I know this is kind of old school, it's on paper. You would take this away and then you would enter all those details on computer. Then you have a record which is easily backed up. I still like to have it done manually because you can take this out on site with you because you may not be sitting in front of the computer when these things happen. And it's no good relying on memory, going back to the computer at the end of the day and saying, okay, remember what happened at 10 o'clock this morning. So if you're able to make notes where you are and then take that information back. The other reason I like to have at least a copy on paper also is because what I advise people is when there's an injury or when there's an incident, you write down all your details, but you also get the person to sign it, okay, where possible. If they're not in a position to sign it, you get someone who witnessed everything that happened to sign it. Now, the reason for this is more than one, okay? One is obviously because you have a record of everything that happens in your workplace. That would form part of your risk management process. Okay, so whilst it's not strictly first aid, if you've got good procedures for minimising risk, it minimises the need for first aid because a lot of injuries can be prevented. Okay, so preventing things from happening decreases the need for first aid. Also gives you an opportunity to say, okay, well, if this same thing has happened multiple times, this month or this year, we need to address why it's happening. Maybe there's a fault in the equipment they're using. Maybe there's a fault in the way we're training people how to use certain things. Maybe there's some things we can put into place, again, to minimise the likelihood of these things happening and then requiring first aid, or even worse, resulting in a serious injury or even death in the workplace. Okay? The other reason why incident reporting is important is because the person themselves who is genuinely injured in the workplace, they may need a copy of these records to assist them with, maybe putting in a claim with work cover or their health insurance or something like that. So they need evidence that something actually happened, not them just telling a story with nothing to back it up. But I guess the one reason that most people think of when we talk about reporting incidents is to protect you as the first aider or as the business owner or as the workplace, where somebody can come back and say, I had this injury or this incident in the workplace and they didn't treat it, or they gave me incorrect advice, or whatever the case might be. And you can draw their file and say, okay, it happened on this day, it happened at this time, this is what we did. And the person themselves even signed it and acknowledged it. So it does protect you, because as much as you may have, either through your business or as a subcontractor, public liability insurance, for example, that insurance only covers you on the assumption that you did everything correctly, as per industry guidelines, as per first aid guidelines, and so on and so forth. So if you've got documented evidence that you followed the correct procedures, that also helps with you, rather than having to rely on memory, or in the event where perhaps the incident didn't happen at all and the person is looking for an opportunity, to perhaps make some money, which there are people out there, unfortunately, who do that. So again, if you've got clearly no records in your workplace of anything that happened, it does leave you exposed to that potentially happening. If you can show that you've got a very clear system of reporting, a very clear system of documentation, then if that information is not in your system, the likelihood that it actually happened is probably less. Okay, so that's something to consider as well. But absolutely, also as a training tool, it gives your employer or the person who's responsible for the first aid in the workplace an opportunity to double check that you're actually doing all the correct things in that particular situation. Okay, so very important. So understand your legal obligations and make sure you document everything. Thank you.